All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Rick Serritella here on this Saturday, February 14th, 2026. We are 68 days away from the 2026 NFL Draft. Buckle up, hunker down. It's the nitty-gritty season, and we are just moving and grooving away. The 2026 NFL Draft Bible coming out in April, over 500 in-depth scouting reports. Been editing all morning. We're up to 116 pages. I think we'll land somewhere around 300, but that'll be out in April. You can follow along on the website over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got daily draft updates counting you down to Destination Pittsburgh. I promise you, you will not find an online destination with more draft analysis, more scouting reports, more updates. We live it, we breathe it, and we talk about it each and every Saturday here on the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. I am one half of the equation, Rick Serritella, and we'll be here for about the next hour of power to talk under the radar prospects on the defensive side of the ball. And if you didn't tune in last week, we did the offensive side of the ball. And also earlier this week, the NFL Scouting Combine list was announced. So I did a Combine snub show in case you missed that one over on the website. And we have a great promo discount going on as well, 30% off. Premium content includes the NFL Draft Bible. That promo is active right now. It's our pre-combine sale, and we'll be out in Indianapolis rolling deep. The NFL Draft Bible will be rolling deep, like 10-man staff deep in Indianapolis. So stay tuned for our boots on the ground analysis from Indianapolis. Of course, we always do the Combine Confidential with our good friend Howard Balzer. The Scout Honors podcast is flowing with our guy Dave Del Cole. Be on the lookout for the website. And, of course, every Tuesday, the Sports Rage with my guy Gabriel Morency. I've been doing that show for about the last 5 years. We talk NFL draft odds each and every week, all 52 weeks, along with the Canadian Football League, the United Football League, which is ramping up in a couple weeks here. So it's an exciting time. Buckle up, hunker down, get your scuba gear on, because we're going to take a deep dive into the draft pool. Again, the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show, defensive prospects. And we're not broadcasting live from the confines of the Jersey Shore. Yesterday was Mom's birthday, so we shot up north to North Jersey, and we'll be shooting back down to the Lava Life later on today to catch the waves. And thank goodness we got some sunshine. Some of the snow is finally melting. Of course, my co-host is no stranger to the cold. He checks in from Chicago, and of course, cut his teeth back in the day for UCLA recruiting before making his way to the NFL as a scout for the St. Louis Rams and Cleveland Browns, eventually working his way over to the original XFL. And of course, with the Canadian Football League front office with multiple teams, a former member of the CBS Today sports pregame show, a mentor at Sports Management Worldwide, a professor at Concordia University, and my co-host each and every Saturday on the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. He joins us right now. The professor, Russell Lande, joining us on the program. Russ, how's it going, man? I missed you last week.
I know last week was a little bit of a craziness with car issues that had to be dealt with, but they are dealt with, and I am back and ready to talk ball with my man, Rick.
Yeah, man. We're in the driver's seat, 68 days away. Man, it's a nervous time of year, and the biggest interview process is coming up in a couple of weeks with the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll come back next week, do a little Combine preview, but I thought it was a good juncture of the calendar to kind of go over some under-the-radar prospects. Last week, we dove into the offensive side of things. This week, we're going to get a little defensive. And anything you want to say to the good people out there before we get underway, Russ?
No, I mean, I'm excited to talk not only underrated guys, but there are a handful of guys that I'm really excited that now that the Combine list is out, that we can sort of jump into a few guys, or two or three on each side of the ball, that excite me about not so much whether they're unknown or really well known, just how big of a stage this is going to be for them, how big of an opportunity is. So I can't wait to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, the Combine usually creates some of the separation with the athletic testing and agility, and we're going to get into some players who are maybe day 2 or day 3 prospects who have a chance to move into the day 1 range. We'll talk about some potential day 3 and undrafted free agents who might slide up to the mid-round range. And we'll talk about some under the radar prospects that may not get drafted at all, but flashed at the all-star circuit or showed some kind of make it trait. So we'll highlight all kinds of different prospects over the next 50 minutes or so of the show. So let's dive right into it. We'll start off with defensive tackles, Russ. And I got to say, this James Thompson Jr. out of Illinois, I caught a glimpse at him at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Really didn't study him too much during the season, but, man, he just flashed all week long. Big, imposing presence at 6'4.5", 310 pounds. And when I tell you the knockback power, the one-on-ones that he displayed from the interior, showing some pass rush movements, as well as being able to stop the run, James Thompson Jr., who did not get invited to the NFL Scouting Combine, and I think I glossed over him during my Combine snub show, but to me, James Thompson Jr. is somebody I would be very excited about on the day 3 side of the draft. And then one other guy I'm going to give you is out of Kansas, Tommy Dunn. Also did not get invited to the Combine. Little undersized at 6'2" and 6'8" inches, 296 pounds. So it doesn't meet the prototypical threshold when it comes to NFL measurements. But again, I just liked his hand combat, his ability to kind of split defenders and get skinny. And he flashed down at the Hula Bowl. And I don't think Tommy Dunn gets drafted, but this is a guy, undrafted free agent. You bring him into camp. Maybe he makes the bottom of your roster or practice squad type of prospect in Tommy Dunn. And those are a couple of way, way, way under the radar prospects at defensive tackle. Russ, who do you got?
Well, firstly, I got to tell you, the kid you mentioned from Illinois, he's the guy people have been telling me about really all season. They've been saying this is a guy that's sort of under the radar. There have been some scouts saying, even though I know he didn't get NFL Combine, there have been some scouts telling me throughout the year and even before the season that this is a better player than a lot of guys who are going to get picked ahead of him. They said this kid's got a little bit of that natural snapping power. They think this is a kid who's going to make it in the NFL. Whether he becomes a starter, they don't think maybe he's a starter, but they think this is a guy that's going to stick and have a career in the NFL. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. I'm actually very surprised he didn't get a Combine invite. But, hey, guys slip through the cracks all the time. I will say the two guys, to me, they're not really unknowns, but to me, they're sort of mysteries as to what they're going to be. One is Caleb Banks. We talked about him a few times on the show. I think a year ago, if you had talked about him this time of year, if he was done with school, I think you'd be talking about a potential first-round pick. But many people know the story. Got dinged in fall camp, really didn't return until midseason. And even then, he battled injury, was done for the year pretty quickly after that because of the recurring issues. Went down to the All-Star games. I mean, this is a kid, when you look at him, this is the guy that I think everybody in the world that's not a football fan, when they think of football, this is what you think of. He's a big, strapping kid, arms that look like they're going to touch the ground, big, thick lower body. And when he is on, he is a dominant physical force. But the most impressive thing to me is he's not just a huge man. He's a good athlete. I'm very excited to see just where this kid ends up. I think if he goes to the right situation with a good coach, I could see him starting as a first-year player. I could see this kid being a real impact guy in the middle, a dominant run defender, and I think he's going to be a guy who can push the pocket and create problems. I never like to compare him and say he's that guy, but the length, the size, although I don't think he's as twitchy, there is a little bit when I look at the kid, of course, now I forgot his name that I had in my head 2 seconds ago, Richard Seymour with the Patriots. There's a little bit of that guy. I think Banks is a little thicker, but in terms of length and overall thickness, size, and strength, there's some similarities there. The other kid is bigger than both those guys, and that's the kid Xavier Harris from Mississippi. And I think you and I, we've been doing this forever. We both have gray hair showing here. 20 years ago, this is a guy people would have been drooling over to put in the middle and make him a true nose. Yeah. But everybody's been talking about the last 10 years. Oh, nobody's using those guys anymore. But if you look around, the teams that are winning now, they do tend to have. You look at Philadelphia with Davis and the big boys. They're starting to go back to having one giant behemoth who, not, and I don't mean a giant slug. I'm not trying to say that. I mean a giant, athletic, powerful interior guy. And that's what this Harris is. I mean, he's 6'7", 350, 360. He's the guy that I think can control the middle for a team. And if you're a team that is willing to play a big guy who may never be a twitchy pass rusher, but I think he can be a push the pocket, squeeze the pocket type pass rusher, this guy's very intriguing. Now, he's got to play with a little better leverage at times. He's got to get a little more consistent, keeping guys from getting into his chest. But I think the potential there, if he's matched up with a good coach and a good scheme, I think there's something there that you could really find a good power, control the two gaps, almost old school nose tackle in this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he commands double teams and sometimes triple team attention, right? He's just a space eater.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I mean, you look at what the kid out of Kentucky last year, Deone Walker, brought to the Broncos.
Yep.
The rookie, right? And it might not always show in the stat sheet, but what he does is allow his teammates to get those one-on-one matchups and those linebackers to roam free. And I think that's what Xavier Harris brings to the table. I do think he could be a very key, at least a 2-down player and starter. Maybe he has 3-down potential. We shall see.
You know who he reminds me of a little bit? And you and I, this tells you again, we're old. But the old John Henderson guy who came out of Tennessee. Yeah. Remember that? He was just enormous. I mean, there's something there. Henderson was a trimmer guy, but huge at 6'9". Henderson was a long, big guy. I could see them, and you saw it in the college football playoff, that one game he had. He was everywhere. Him and the kid next to him, whose name is slipping my mind right now. But Harris was everywhere. And for a 350 guy, it was impressive, his ability to stay on his feet, make plays. I agree with you. I think this guy could fit very well very early in the right scheme.
Yeah, we saw some of that down at the Senior Bowl too, man. I was really impressed with Caleb Banks. All right, Russ, Lande, Rick Serritella talking defensive under-the-radar prospects. Always great to see our friend Douglas Dorner in the chat room. Good morning. We love to get interactive with it. I think we're streaming live on the social media platforms. I can't find them at the moment, but I do see people tuned in, so we appreciate you hopping on board. Smash that like button, share it, subscribe it. We're here each and every Saturday. We're going to get into some edge rushers. And, you know, really, I thought that the combine list did a pretty good job of identifying most of the pass rushers. There's a couple guys you could state an argument for, but I think for the most part, they did a pretty good job at that position. However, I know you have a couple of eyes on some players who have potential to really move up draft boards, especially when we get to Indianapolis.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we've talked about it a lot. In today's NFL, I think the league has realized due to analytics and due to obviously the sort of hearing what the old people used to say years ago, and the analytics has backed it up, which is if you can find a way to get to the quarterback, everything else is sort of secondary for a pass rusher. They don't have to be dominant in every area. When I look at Romello Height out of Texas Tech, does he pass the eye test? No, not exactly. He looks sort of like a guy that you almost want to write off because he doesn't really have that length as a height and long arm guy. And when you look at him in terms of a shorter guy, he doesn't look like that rocked up James Harrison, like Bulldog. But all this kid does is make plays. He makes it hard for teams to block him one-on-one, which if you are a disruptive enough guy at the NFL level where you can't be handled one-on-one by tackles consistently, you've done your job. And I think this guy is going to be a hard matchup for some of the bigger offensive tackles at the NFL level. And the other kid that I like, and it's sort of an older school type player, is Max Llewellyn out of Iowa. Max is not going to, I don't think, although I shouldn't say that because Iowa guys almost always test way better than we expect them to. When you watch Max, he doesn't look like a freak of nature athlete. He looks like a good athlete. He may well test better than we expect because, like I said, Iowa's done a great job over the last 20 years of guys coming in there that we thought were either marginal or good athletes, and they test like top 5% of all the players in the draft. I like Llewellyn. When I watch this kid play, he's very subtle with his technique. He knows exactly what he's doing, which is sort of, we talk about it all the time with the O-linemen at Iowa, but if you look even at their history of D-line, they have a ton of guys that come in the league. They may never become stars, but they have guys, and this is going way back. Colin Cole was the guy that came out when I was scouting with the Browns. Colin lasted 13 years in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly Aaron Campman, guys like that don't go in the first 2 rounds but become 10, 12, 13-year players. I think Llewellyn is the type of guy that's probably a mid-round guy. I don't think he's going to go super high because I don't think he is that freaky edge guy. But I think some team is going to get a really good football player. I look at the Buffalo Bills and I say, okay, you've been very successful for 5-6 years with A.J. Epenza as your third pass rusher. They took Epenza in the second round. This kid's better than him, in my opinion. He's a little bit longer with the arms. I think he's a little bit more fundamentally sound and a little bit side-to-side twitchier. And I'm not trying to knock A.J. He's had a good career. He's 5 years in. He's going to play another 5 to 10 years. I'm just saying I think this guy has a little bit more talent to be disruptive. I think somebody's going to get a real bargain with this kid because of his length, his technique, and he knows where to be. He's almost never out of position. Really like him as a player.
Yeah, Max Llewellyn is someone who, he's probably never going to make an All-Pro or Pro Bowl, but he'll be a solid starter for a decade in the league. He's just fundamentally sound, well-rounded player, as you alluded to. Iowa's always well coached, will probably test well, but he just doesn't get the attention because it's a pretty deep edge rusher class, right? So he could go early day 2, he could slide into day 3, become a real premium value pick. And height, I saw Romello Height down at the Senior Bowl, and he flashed some power and some bull rush moves because he's more of a finesse, speedier guy. But I liked what I saw. He weighed in a little bit heavier than I anticipated, showed better strength than I imagined. And I would imagine Romello Height now is clearly in that day 2 territory. And who knows, maybe he continues to ascend up draft boards. On the Combine Snub Show, I did mention Corday Snyder. He's a guy I've mentioned on this show. And it's just because, again, he's just one of these players that gets no love. I was down there in Vanderbilt when he was 280 pounds. He weighed in at 259 at the Senior Bowl. So he had that inside-outside versatility at Vanderbilt, would slide up and down that defensive line. I think he's going to kind of make a concerted effort to be an edge rusher at the next level, coming in at 259. And again, like the stat sheet, not a lot of production when you look at the box score, but man, this guy shows up ferocious, tenacious, leader, vocal. I like what this guy brings to the table. I'm not sure he gets drafted, but he's a make it guy all day long, that Corday Snyder. And then, one guy I noticed, Russ, and I have not mentioned this yet, but, at this juncture last year, we were talking about Mikael Kamara of Indiana leading the nation in sacks. And they kind of moved him, changed his role a little bit this year. He was kind of dropping back in pass coverage a little bit more. And the production dipped. And, he's undersized, 6'1.5", 260 pounds, probably going to have short arms. So he's got a lot of negatives working against him. But when you take a look at what he brought to the culture in terms of leadership from James Madison coming over with Kirk Cignetti 2 years ago, 2024 was really the transitional year where Indiana kind of took that step, and Kamara was in the middle of it all. And so when you talk about just the production, the leadership, the ability, I don't know if he gets drafted, but man, that's somebody you just kind of want to bring into camp and see if he can sustain.
It's interesting because 2 players, and I'm not saying the skill set is the same, but 2 undersized defensive tackles that he reminds me of in terms of that leadership, that ability to be a guy that helps everybody play better. So he carved out a career. One is now a longtime NFL D-line coach, is Jeff Scanina. When he came into the league 20-something years ago with the Rams, I mean, he was a short, sawed-off, 6', 280 guy, just a hard-nosed bulldog, great effort, great instincts, unbelievable work ethic. And he played almost a decade. And he was never a consistent starter, but he was part of the flow of that D-line. He was a great guy to have in your locker room. And then when I was at the Rams, we also brought in undrafted DeMarco Farr. I mean, DeMarco was 6', 275, a superstar at University of Washington, came in, made the team undrafted. He started for almost a decade. and he was a really good football player. And it was because he was twitchy, but he also had it. He had that personality, that leadership that just made people gravitate to him and raise the level of play because he just had something about him, almost like those great coaches and certain position players that just being around them, you want to play harder. And DeMarco had that. He had that. And that's what I think you're talking about here is sometimes guys don't fit all the measurable boxes. But when you're talking fourth D tackle on game day, someone that's going to raise the level, and they may only get 8 to 10 snaps a game, so you can handle a guy like that. He's not going to hurt you as a little guy. And then additionally, think about nowadays with the new kickoff rules, a guy that's 260, your fourth D tackle can actually get out there on the funky kickoff, and he may actually be okay. So you're not losing a spot to put a big D lineman as your fourth D tackle. So there's something with that kid. I think I agree with you. I think he's an underrated guy. I think he has a chance to carve out a career as a backup.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And, just some guys, I'm not comparing him to these players, but once upon a time, we questioned the height and length of Von Miller and Elvis Dumervil, right?
Yeah. Given he was a great player, but even Aaron Donald, he would have been the first pick overall if people didn't question that. I mean,
oh, no doubt.
Geno Atkins, right?
Yeah.
Geno was a fourth-round pick. He was an all-pro because he was 6 foot, 280 something. So there is definitely something to be said. And it's always made me wonder because I know when you look at these kids, you want them a certain height, you want that. But I don't know about you, but the two things I've always heard from O-line coaches and from D-line coaches, the two things are low man wins and first man wins. Well, if the low man wins, why do I care if he's 6 foot? I mean, what does it matter? 6 foot, 6'2". Now I'm not going to play a 5'8" defensive tackle. I get that. They're going to get engulfed. But 6 foot, how are you telling me that's that big a deal? Now, if they have 25-inch arms, yeah. But if they have 31 and a half, 33-inch arms, I'm not overly concerned because they're going to be the low guy if they have any flexibility.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait until his pro day to get the arm length measurements because he did not get a combine invite and should be very well attended. I know Fernando Mendoza said he will participate in the throwing portion of the Indiana Pro Day just to help his teammates out there. So all 32 will certainly be in attendance. Hey, we got a comment from our good friend Dave Del Cole. It says Danny Dennis Sutton hasn't been talked about enough yet this year. And you could argue that's a very accurate statement and reminds me a little bit of Harold Landry coming out. Not a guy that I think is going to take the league by storm, but could be a solid 7-8 sack annual kind of contributor. And his motor runs hot and dry, Russ. I think it's just about being a little bit more consistent. But when you talk about size and production and pedigree, Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State, they've had some good ones in recent years. He's, I think, a dark horse first-round candidate.
Oh, I agree. I think you're right on. I think part of the reason we haven't talked about him that much is I think he's somewhat of a known commodity. It's not like we're debating if he's going to get an opportunity because a lot of right. I mean, he's a high floor guy. He's not going to be a guy that would fall into the players that we're not talking about or aren't getting much pub going into the draft or the combine. He's a guy I think everybody knows about. Everybody believes is going to probably, worst case, be a third-round pick. But he's going in the first 2 days of the draft.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. And make sure you check out the Scout Honors podcast in memory of Dave T. Thomas with the host Dave Del Cole. And I just hopped on and did a draft overview show. You can find that online over at allaccessfootball.com. Just we continue to kind of find under the radar talent. That's what we do here at the NFL Draft Bible. So make sure you follow along over at allaccessfootball.com. Check out the NFL Draft headquarters page. You can get lost for years searching through all the information that's on there. And we're going through some defensive under the radar prospects. That's going to bring us to the linebacker position. Russ, who do you got?
Firstly, you got to say a handful of these guys that we're going to talk about are Indiana guys. Because I honestly think there's been, because of Mendoza, because of Curt Cignetti, I think there's been a little bit of sort of overlooking some of the guys that they may have. And
it's unbelievable. Like I talked about it last week. Kalen Black, the running back who we've hyped up all season, no combine invite. And Indiana was the national champions. Like, what are we looking at here?
And he murdered it at the Senior Bowl. It doesn't make sense. So that's what makes me wonder. Like, I'm looking, to me, the two linebackers I'm interested in. One of them's Indiana, is Aiden Fisher.
Mhm.
Now, I have no idea what he's going to run, but I can tell you one thing: when I watch him on film, nobody outruns the angle on this kid. He looks the part. He looks long. He's linear. I mean, he's everything you look at when you want that athletic, play in space linebacker. I really like this kid. I think he's going to be a better pro. Not that he wasn't a good college, but in terms of getting publicity and recognition, I think he's going to get more as a pro. This kid's really good. I think he's going to fit in today's NFL perfectly because he's smooth, he's fluid. I'll bet you he's a 4.75 guy, 4.7. But when you watch him play, he plays like he's 4.55 because he's so instinctive and smart. So I like him. I think he's an underrated football player. There are times, no doubt, that he gets a little upright when he's chasing and he'll run by some plays. But I really think this kid's got a lot of the tools to be a good football player at the NFL level.
I'm a huge fan of Aiden Fisher, and what I like about him is he plays his best when the brights are the lightest. He comes up with clutch plays, momentum-changing turnovers, and selfishly, as somebody who lives in New Jersey, I'm excited about the hiring of John Harbaugh with the Giants, and to me, Aiden Fisher would be a perfect captain to steer the ship for Big Blue. And I agree with you. He's probably going to time somewhere in that 4.75, 4.77 range, probably get dinged on some big boards, could even slide to day 3. But this is a next level starter when I take a look at Aiden Fisher.
Yeah. I got to say, if you're talking about John Harbaugh and perfect captains, I'm going to say my next guy might even be a better fit as a captain. Ooh. I don't think he's as good a player.
Hit us.
But Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. I mean, he screams John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, he may not. He may time slower than Fisher. And when you watch him, he is not going to make. Yeah, I don't know how well he's going to.
There was a lot of concerns about the hip stiffness going into Mobile, but I think he compensates with instincts and awareness. Yep. You know, and but there is some hip stiffness there.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a top athlete, but when I look at Coach Harbaugh and what he wants, I mean, you talk about this kid's ability to play zone coverage. He is phenomenal reading what's in front of him. He can be that chess master calling out plays. Like I said, I think he's not going to be a great tester. I think NFL teams are going to go, oh, mercy, this guy's a really good player.
They're going to overthink it.
Yeah, they're going to overthink it a little bit. And hey, I'm not saying he's a superstar. I'm just saying if you're the guy who wants a tough, physical inside linebacker who is a solid athlete, maybe not a special one, but a solid one who you can let do his thing, this guy, to me, if you're a physical defense, this is a guy that fits in your scheme. Now, he's not going to fit in every scheme. He wouldn't fit in Seattle. I mean, those guys, it's a whole team of gazelles. Those guys are running in 4.2s. The empty tackles are outrunning safeties. But in terms of certain schemes that want physicality, this kid's got something to him. I like him. Like you mentioned with Fisher, probably not, or maybe slip into the 4th round. I think Rodriguez is a day 3 player. I don't think he's going to go in the first 3 rounds. But I really like him as a player that makes it. And whether he becomes a starter or maybe he's a special teams captain, your 3rd linebacker on game day, and just that guy that every time he gets on the field, he makes an impact.
It's going to be a fascinating case study, that's for sure, because I throw all the measurables and testing out the window when it comes to a player like Jacob Rodriguez. And I just like good football players. So if I was an NFL GM on my big board behind me over here, I'd have Jacob Rodriguez on my 1st round board. And I think this guy is going to go on and be an impact starter. We talked about Fisher making.
All right, let's mark this down. Mark this down. I like this. It says impact starter.
Jacob Rodriguez, impact starter.
See,
baby.
but that's what I love. You gotta. If you like him, you gotta go down on the ship with him. You gotta believe in him and say that's your guy.
No doubt. And I'll pound the table for that guy. And if I'm wrong, that's a guy I'm willing to be wrong on, because I mean, when you have the habitual playmaking ability, that says something to me, right? And I don't care what level, what size you are, what your hip stiffness is, but when you constantly show up big in big time moments, big time plays, big time players make big time plays in big time spots, that's Jacob Rodriguez. So
I mean, if you think about what you're saying there, guys who were highly productive, that was one of the mantras under Ozzie Newsome when they got to day 3. Was anybody they were looking at late in the draft, they had to be uber productive in college, because that would translate to special teams and sometimes would allow those players to outperform their draft spot. And that's part of why the Ravens always had good special teams and also always found late round and undrafted guys that made the team and were starters because they did such a great job of identifying not just statistical production that the media puts out, but real football production that their scouts and coaches found in players that translated. So yeah, when guys are super productive in college, you got to be really cautious about over sort of looking them because of, hey, maybe they don't test perfectly, maybe they don't have the perfect arm size, especially on defense, where instincts are the number one separator of good and bad players.
Yeah, I think the other factor too is it's such a deep linebacker class. I mean, it's as deep and talented as I can remember, and so that could also have an impact in terms of the NFL decision makers. And it is a deep linebacker class. Our guy Douglas Dorner mentions Wade Woodaz from Clemson, 6'4", 235. He'll be out at the combine, little combine invite. I know our Mid-Atlantic scout Lauren Davidoff is working on a scouting report for Wade Woodaz and the NFL Draft Bible as we speak. A couple other linebackers I just want to make note of. I don't think any of these guys are getting drafted, but they would be high on my list immediately following the draft in round 8, which is the undrafted free agent frenzy. And I would be fighting for guys like Jackson Kuwach out of Miami, Ohio, 6'3" and 6'8", 231 pounds. As you know, Russ, walk-on players have a hard time making it to the draft party. And, you know, granted, he did walk on at Ohio State, didn't pan out, was kind of a one-year wonder, didn't have any production until this past season, but then he just explodes, 108 tackles, flying around the field. Saw him down at one of the All-Star games, the Hula or American, I can't remember which one, but he was clearly one of the top linebackers in attendance, and I think he's done enough now to at least warrant potential late-round consideration, but again, just you're trying to identify guys with make-it trades. And we talked about playmakers and big-time players showing up in big-time spots. If you tuned in during the weekdays to any of this maction, Jordan Kwiatkowski from Central Michigan was likely making a big-time play. He's taking pick-6 interceptions back to the house, creating fumbles, recovering fumbles. Another one of these guys, over 100 tackles this past season. Now, I was very disappointed, and I don't know if this was by the players' option or if the All-Star games just overlooked him. But, I mean, golly, like, can we get this man into an All-Star game? He was non-existent, out of sight, out of mind the entire month of January. I thought an All-Star game appearance would have really been beneficial for his draft stock. We'll see now what his pro day brings at Central Michigan. And one under the radar guy out of UTSA, who I had really very little information on until I saw him at the Hula Bowl, and I think he made his way to the American or Shrine Bowl. He was called up through the process. Shad Banks, undersized linebacker, converted from wide receiver, just great athleticism, and somebody who's going to fight for a 53-man roster spot once he gets inside of camp. But Jackson Kuwach, Jordan Kwiatkowski, Shad Banks, 3 linebackers I don't get drafted, but 3 linebackers I believe will be tough to cut from the facility once they're inside the building.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about those guys, it reminded me of one other guy. 2 years ago when I was doing the CFL work, I had to look at a linebacker at University of Buffalo. And when I put on the film, this other cat kept making plays, so I looked him up, and his name's Red Murdoch. You talk about a kid that play. I mean, he is sawed off. I mean, he is a short little dude, or at least he looks it on film. I don't even know what he measured. But you talk about a guy that looks short, looks thick, but all this kid does is shoot gaps and make plays, and he plays like his hair's on fire. There is no quitting this guy. I really loved him when I watched him then. I think this guy's got something to him. Like those other guys you just mentioned, this guy may be at the bottom end of guys that have a chance of getting drafted. He might be a 6th, 7th rounder at best, but I really liked this kid 2 years ago when I was watching film of Buffalo. This kid was just making plays. He was blowing guys up. He was breaking up passes. I was so impressed with him. I wrote his name down and said, 2 years. I said 2 years down the road, this kid's going to be a guy. And Now, 2 years later, I almost forgot about him until you started mentioning those scrappy guys, and his name popped in my head.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I'm looking at him on the big board here, and I got Murdoch at 27, Kwiatkowski at 29, Shad Banks at 33, so Kuwach at 24. So all these guys are kind of bunched there in that late three batch. And again, we'll get some separation come combine and pro days. And TJ Quinn out of Louisville, I'm seeing 35 on my big board. He had a very good week, I think, at the American Bowl as well. So some under the radar. AJ Pena, let's give a little Rhode Island love because he went from the Hula Bowl to the Shrine Bowl based on his performance. He really stood out. I don't know if Rhode Island's ever had somebody drafted, but AJ Pena deserves a shout out and a mention here on the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. Caleb Elam's somebody I was just editing for the Draft Bible before we hopped on the show. Yes, Dave Del Cole, a lot of production, very well-rounded player, doesn't do anything elite, but does a lot of different little things very well, can stuff the run, has gotten after the quarterback, can defend and drop in coverage. So I think a solid mid-round prospect out of TCU is that Caleb Elam's and we love getting interactive with it. So if you guys are tuned in, listening, have a question, we got answers. Big shout out to Douglas Dorner and Dave Del Cole in the chat room. I've got Russ Lande with me, and anybody else at linebacker, Russ?
No, that is it. That the Murdoch guy, I'm glad I thought of him. He was he was just a guy that just jumped out at me 2 years ago, and I just remember watching film, and I'm watching these blue defenders all over the place, and this one dude is making like 80% of the tackles. And I'm like, who is this guy? Because he isn't the Canadian I was looking at. That was the disappointing part. The Canadian, he was running by him. I was like, what just happened here?
It's always fun when that happens, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll give you the quick story. I don't even remember who the bad player was. But this is when the Rams in St. Louis, we had some linebacker from some small school that we needed our linebacker coach, John Bunning, to look at. I think he had been a guy that one of the in-house guys had noticed. I don't think an area guy looked. So they gave the film to John Bunning, and John didn't even waste the time. But he went right to the college department and said, hey, I have no idea who this safety is that's making all these plays, but you guys need to find out if he's a senior. That turned out to be Billy Jenkins, the kid we ended up bringing. He ended up starting for the Rams because Coach Bunning had his eyes open and wasn't just glued on his guy. He saw another dude making plays, and I think he was an HBCU kid. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he found Billy just because he was paying attention. And Billy ended up playing. I think Billy played in the league like 8 or 9 years, started for us for a number of years. And that was all because of him, because we got him undrafted. And this was just due to him watching film. So you got to pay attention when you're watching film. If anybody jumps, my philosophy, and we're not going down a whole rabbit hole here, but whenever I'm watching film, if someone jumps out, I'm not going to take the time and stop watching the team I'm watching. But I always write down the year, the school, and the jersey, because I can always go look that up after. But I just write 2024, University of Buffalo 47, and I'll circle it. And when I'm done with film, I'll look him up, see what year he is, and put him on my list of he's a this year guy, next year guy, 2 years down the road. So it's important to pay attention to those guys who shoot out and jump and make plays.
Yeah, we talked about the depth of this linebacker class. Dave Del Cole chiming in with Jack Kelly out of BYU, Lander Barton, who's also Utah. I did a write-up on Barton about 2 or 3 years ago and slapped the day 2 grade on him. I think he's still in that range, kind of lengthy, roaming linebacker, covers a lot of ground, really a solid wrap-up open field tackler, which I really like about his game. And then Jack Kelly, I think opinions fluctuate on Kelly. He played off ball, but also showed the ability to get after the quarterback. I think he'll project as an off-ball linebacker, but he does have some pass rushing prowess. And I don't know. I've heard conflicting reports on his draft stock. I kind of tend to believe he'll sneak into the latter part of day 2. I think he's just inside that top 100 range, maybe on the fringe. But good look at the linebacker spot here with Russ Lande, Rick Serritella, the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. We're here each and every Saturday. We're talking under the radar defensive prospects. Last week we did offensive prospects. Earlier this week we did a combine snub show, and we also have the Scout Honor podcast with a whole draft general outlook and overview. And of course, Tuesday was the Sports Rage spot with more draft talk. We just can't stop. We don't even know how to stop. Our 24th year of independent draft coverage. So check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We got the promo code that we are doing right now, pre-combine sale, 30% off, includes the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, and that's the best draft guide on the planet, I guarantee you. And if you don't agree, we'll refund you your money back, no questions asked, just because I've been doing this for so long, and I believe in my scouting department so strongly, and I just know I'm piecing it together. I'm witnessing it coming all together. It's just a beautiful masterpiece work of art, and out of 24 years of doing this is going to be our best one yet. So again, buckle up, hunker down. Russ has got his birthday suit on because we're talking NFL draft, and we're diving deep into the draft pool with some under the radar prospects. All right, we did defensive tackles, we did edge rushers, we did linebackers, Russ. That brings us to cornerbacks, and again, we're just taking a look at guys who can move up from day 3 to day 2, day 2 to day 1, undrafted to day 3. So what do you got for us here, Russ?
Well, the first guy I got, it's interesting, is because I worked for two people. One, Charlie Army at the Rams, who anytime you brought up a corner that was short, his response would be, I don't like corners who I can eat peanuts off their head. He said, if I can eat peanuts off their head, I don't want to bring him in the building. And then we both worked for a guy in the CFL who kept saying, I only want corners that are 6 foot plus, that can run 4.4.
I know who that is.
Yeah, and you know what? If they're 6 foot and they can run 4.4, they're playing Sundays. They're not playing for 75,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
Or they're bad kids, and that's why they're going up there. So to me, when I look at D'Angelo Pounds, I think he's that guy that has a chance, and it's the corner from Indiana. I should throw that in there. Yeah. He's a kid I think has a chance to get overlooked a little bit. Now, I'm not saying this kid's going 5th round, but I think if you just took production, you'd be talking a 1st round pick. But I think there is going to be some pushback. Some coaches are not going to want a guy that looks like he's about 5'8" and change. He's going to probably be, I think, in that 2nd or 3rd round area. I really think this is a really good football player. When you watch him, when you see his pedal, you see his explosion to the ball. And the thing that impressed me in their final 2 games to go to win the championship, his ability to reach in front of the receiver and break up a pass without using that back arm too much to cause an exaggerated look for a ref to call a penalty. That's a really unique trait. Most guys that come out of college have to be sort of trained to not yank so hard on the hip to get that leverage, and they call it penalties. He doesn't do that. This kid's got a natural something about him, plays with a sort of an arrogance, which corners have to have, and he's willing to come up and tackle. I think this kid Pounds, I think he's going to be a really good football player at the NFL level, and I wish I could remember the kid's name. There was a corner out of Virginia Tech that came out about 10 years ago. Short little dude, went in the 2nd round to the Chiefs, played for about 10 years, really good corner, really short dude, about 5'8" or 5'9", and everybody killed him coming out, said he was a great player, he was too short, and he ended up playing a decade. That's who this kid is. I'm not saying he's as good as Antonio.
What school was it?
I want to say it was Virginia Tech.
Because I was going to go Dante Dion, I think, out of Boise State.
This kid started for like 8 or 10 years. And for the life of me, it's killing me. Played for the Chiefs. He was a stud. I'm not saying he's Antonio Winfield. There's some similarities, though. I think Antonio was a little more twitchy. But this kid's a starter. This kid's got a little bit of Jason Verrett in him. But the thing we should mention, and it's only fair to provide both sides, is there's a reason little players don't get drafted as highly. Little players tend to break. Jason Verrett, as a physical talent, was a top 5 corner in the NFL. He was elite in terms of what he could do. And on the rare occasion he was healthy, he was elite in the NFL in terms of coverage. But he broke almost every year at some point and got hurt. That's the concern with a guy like Pounds. He is not a big kid. You worry about that. But in terms of pure football instincts, competitiveness, speed, hips, this kid's got everything you want. Now, the other kid is sort of the opposite that I look at. And this is a kid I've been talking about since last year, is the kid from Ohio State, Igbinosun. I've actually been reading people saying this kid may go in day 3. I'm saying if people are saying this kid, even third round to me is low.
Yeah.
This kid to me, especially anybody who just watched the Super Bowl and doesn't think you want big corners. Look at those guys at Witherspoon and the kid they took in the third round this year, that big tall kid number 3. You're telling me you don't want big kids, athletes that can flip their hips? Yeah. Does this kid grab? Yes, he's a holder. There's no question.
He cut down on it though this year. He cut
did.
down the red flags.
Yeah, he did. And hey, so put him in kitchen gloves every day in practice. Make him learn not to use his fingers and his thumbs. Make him learn to cover. But wow, was he an athlete? He's long. He's, I think, going to measure in the 6'2" range. There aren't many humans in the world that are 6'1", 2", that have great hips, can run, can cover. I think this kid's going to turn out to be a guy that keeps getting better. At Ohio State, he's gotten great coaching, but he's just a guy that I think is a little bit raw still. He's going to continue to get that great coaching like he had at Ohio State. And 3 years from now, I think you're talking about a guy that's going to be a high-end starter at the NFL level. Very excited for his future. I know he makes some mental errors every once in a while. He'll bite and do things like that. In terms of athleticism, competitiveness, instincts, I think it's all there for this kid to really develop into a very good NFL player.
Yeah, physical, maybe almost a little too physical, but 6'1" and 6'8" inches, 193 pounds. I mean, I have him inside my top 10 on the cornerback rankings. I could state a case that you could slide him up into the top 5. I think Davison Benson from Ohio State is a borderline first-round talent, and it'll be interesting to see where he pans out in this year's NFL draft. All right, I had a point I wanted to make. I forgot. Oh, I wanted to just go back to D'Angelo Pons because Pons I have at 5'8" and 5'8" inches, 170 pounds. Dante Dion, who I mentioned out of Boise State, came out in the 2016 draft, 5'8" and 7/8 inches, 158 pounds. So similar height. Pounds is actually a dozen pounds heavier. But Dion, he was hanging out in the league for quite a while, was a spot filling starter. And I think Pons is clearly a much better prospect than Dante Dion was coming out of Boise State. So I think, again,
I got the name.
Who was it?
Dion? Brandon Flowers.
Oh, Flowers, yeah.
That's who this kid reminds me of. And I'm not trying to cut off your thing, but to me, there's a lot of Brandon Flowers. This kid will come up. You saw him in those playoff games. He came up and he made some hits. Most little corners, they're like, let me grab onto a blocker and let him push me out of the way. This kid came up and he rifled some people. I was like, okay, this kid will do it. And that's what Brandon Flowers was. And not only was Flowers short, but he ran a 4.58.
Yeah.
4.58 is 5'8.5". And Brandon ended up starting for 6 years. So that's who this kid is.
You just never know. Well, I'm glad you interrupted my thought process because when you did that, I looked up at my big board and I see Avery Smith staring me in my face. And this kid out of Toledo, I'd never even heard of him until I went down to the East-West Shrine Bowl. Russ, he was lights out, the best cornerback in attendance. Now he's a little undersized at 5'9" and 5/8 inches, 185 pounds. But, I mean, this kid is going to be a slot starter. I mean, slot nickelbacks are essentially starters.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's a every down player. I mean, Avery Smith, one of the best man coverage cornerbacks I've evaluated in this year's draft class. So just a name to keep on the back burner or maybe the front burner. I have him right now at number 12 on my board, but I have a feeling he's going to wind up moving on up when it's all said and done. A couple other guys like Devin Marshall out of NC State really made a name for himself on the All-Star trails. And as did Sayre Wright from Nebraska. I think all three of them were at the East-West Shrine Bowl, which was a very talented event. And Sayre Wright also brings size and instincts. And I think, both Marshall and Wright have a chance of getting drafted late. I think the Toledo kid, Avery Smith, will be a day 2 selection. And then also I just want to mention and at least give him a little bit of shine because only 6 players from the FCS were invited to the combine, 0 from the HBCU. But Jared Washington out of South Carolina State was at the FCS showcase. He was also at another one of these all-star games. So he's gotten out in front of NFL scouts. Just one name to keep in mind late in the draft, just because he did make the rounds in January. So one last name I wanted to highlight there at cornerback. We're winding down to the nitty-gritty of the show here. Got a few minutes left to toy around with. The last position we're going to preview here, Russ, is safeties. And I thought the Combine and Jeff Foster did a good job with the safety invitations. However, how do you overlook Cole Wisniewski? I mean, this guy was a national championship All-American at North Dakota State, comes to Texas Tech, wins a starting job. You know, whether you want to say you don't know if he's a linebacker or a safety, at the end of the day, the fact that he's not in Indianapolis is just a damn shame.
Well, and the thing is, isn't the Combine the perfect place to figure out
exactly the
linebacker,
kind of guy you want
to safety,
yes.
right? Mm-hmm. And who knows? Maybe what happened is they may have reached out and said, "Hey, there's a lot of teams that would like you to work out with the linebackers. Some would like you to work out with the safeties. Are you okay coming in early? You'll just do the linebacker drills. You don't have to do any of your testing then, or you can if you want. And then you'll stay for the DB." And he may have said, "No, I'm not going to do both." And they may have said, "Well, if you don't want to do both, that's not going to work." It's possible. I don't think so, though. I think they just decided to overlook him. To me, he's the exact reason you have the Combine.
Yep.
You want to get him out there so you can compare and contrast to the other players at his position, one after the other after the other. Yeah, definitely an overlooked guy. The guy that made it, and I'm happy he made it, but I'm excited to figure out sort of what he is, because you brought him up to me early in the season, is the safety from Texas, Taffy. Because is Taffy just a super smart, uber instinctive guy that found a way to be productive because of that? Or does he have the athletic traits? I like this kid as a make-it backup. And I like a lot of things about him. I think he plays with that edge. I think he's got better speed than people give him credit for. But I will say the Combine is going to make or break this kid's draft status. Because if he runs in the 4.6s, he's not getting picked.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the 40 time come into play, especially at the safety position in recent years. One other guy I thought was interesting, just because he started at the Hula. He got called up to the Senior Bowl. You mentioned him during the season. Jalen Stroman out of Notre Dame, maybe another overlooked guy, maybe a dark horse candidate to hear his name called late in the draft. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job with the safeties.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Jeff has been doing it a long time, and I think the way they work with the NFL teams to make sure they get as many of the kids there as possible. Now, there are some teams that are notorious for they'll always vote no on certain guys because they want certain small school guys to not get attention. But in general, I mean, Jeff has done a great job. He's a great dude, and I think he's worked his butt off to make the Combine not only the event that helps NFL teams figure players out on the field, but I think he does a really good job of making sure any kid that has something that teams need to figure out medically or has a unique background that needs more sort of talking and investigation, they're getting them there so they can get looked at and figured out. So I like what they've done. I hope the game stays in Indy, even though it's not one of my favorite cities.
2 more years it's going to be at least. Yeah. 2 more
It'll
years.
Be there forever, I think, as long as we're alive. Because for the Combine, it's perfect. Even though I'm not a big fan of that city, it is a great place for the NFL Combine.
Yeah, I will say the one thing, if Jeff is listening, and I mentioned this on the Combine Snub Show, is I would just like to change. I don't want to change the process. I just want to change the timing of it. So, like, the teams vote for the players for the Combine in early December, right? Maybe mid-December, but I think it's early December. And to me, like, the Combine list just came out 2 days ago on February 12th. So to me, like, if you waited even just till late January, like even if it was Senior Bowl week where you still got like some of the practice, maybe the game hasn't been played yet, but you have all the NFL teams there in Mobile, like just conduct the votes right there, because now we've seen the All-Star circuit and there's about 6 or 7 of these events. And we just highlighted a handful of them that really stood out. And you watch them at the All-Star circuit and you say, wow, that guy needs to be in Indy. And there's just too many guys that we're identifying here that because of the timing of the vote process and how that selection process is conducted, just too many guys getting left out in the cold. And also, like pre-COVID, Russ, we were up to 350, 340 combine invites. The last 5 years since COVID, it's dwindled down. I mean, 319 combine invites this year. I think we should be going in the other direction, not shortening the invites, but extending more invites.
100%, because that way you can get more guys' numbers, save people in terms of going out on the road and having to go to a million pro days. Let them go to the big pro days, but they don't have to go to all of them. So 2 things I would do. 1, I would invite 450 right off the bat. Secondly, Jeff knows what he's doing. Jeff worked as a scout in the league. He's been running the combine. How about if the teams want to vote in December, fine. Give Jeff a 15-person, anybody you want. End of January. He can talk to all his buddies around the NFL, and they give him a name, and he just says, all right, we're adding him to the list. And even if half of them turn out to be terrible at the combine, who cares? That's another 6 or 7 good ones you brought in. So to me, that's the easy solution because Jeff knows what he's doing. He's a very smart guy, hardworking, tons of connections. Just let him add 10 guys without even having to go through the process. Boom, done. They come, and if you brought in 450, and what you do, to me, truthfully, you bring in, say, 350, and then you look at the HBCU, you look at the FCS, and you say, all right, who are the seniors that made first team all conference? Every one of them's coming to the combine. Because why risk overlooking a kid like that when the cost is minimal? And are there going to be some duds? 100%. If you bring in some kids from tiny schools that NFL teams don't think are worth it, you may have a few that are awful. But is it better to get the numbers there and find out if these kids have anything to them than have to send? What if a kid in the spring has a pro day at an HBCU game, or not a game, a pro day, or an FCS, where all of a sudden a 5'11" corner runs a 4.39, a 4.41, and there's only one team there. Now, not that they're all going to go back, but other teams are going to want to work them out again. They're going to be chasing to find film, and this is going to be in mid-March. Whereas if you get him there in February, work him out, and he has a good workout, at least everybody knows him. They've seen him. You can interview him. So I don't know. That's just something I'd consider.
I said it should be 500 on the show the other day, right? And then you just have conference-wide pro days. So the players who didn't get invited to the combine, the Power 4 conferences can just do a conference-wide pro day for the non-combine invites. So now there's only 4 destinations instead of 70 destinations that scouts have to travel to. And then you could do the same thing. Like they have the FCS Showcase. They have the HBC Legacy Bowl. I think they added an HBCU combine now. So, to me, that makes too much damn sense. And it also saves NFL teams a tremendous amount of money. And it makes the evaluation process so much more efficient because, as you know, the combine is the ultimate level playing same
exactly.
purpose, same schedule, year after year, same medical facilities. So anyway, I beat that horse to death on the other show, so I won't hammer the folks at home on that too much. We got an hour of power in the books, though, Russ. Great to have you back this week. We'll come back next week and go through that combine list, do a little preview show for the people, talk about some players that we're excited about, talk about some players who have something on the line. I'm sure we'll hear more about who's opting in and who's opting out, especially at the quarterback position. And, I mean, outside of Mendoza, I would find it hard to fathom that any of these quarterbacks are skipping the combine this year. They need it.
They do, 100%. I mean, I'm a big believer, and I know I've talked about it a lot. Any player that goes to the combine, you may as well work out because just based on math, you get 2 shots as opposed to just waiting for your pro day. Because trust me, if you're a good enough player that your pro day is not ideal or your combine workout isn't great, there's still going to be scouts at your pro day. You do better, those are the numbers they'll use. But if you skip the combine and you just wake up wrong on your pro day, all of a sudden you have 1 bad day. That's the only number they got. So I'd always rather have 2 chances than 1 to perform my best.
Well, we're old enough to remember COVID, which was only 5 years ago. But I always tell players, like, you should never bypass an opportunity unless you are a first-round lock,
Yep.
there's a very few handful of players. Why would you bypass an opportunity? Because anything can happen. A pandemic could occur. Your pro day could be canceled. Now you just blew an opportunity to work out in front of 32 teams. Make it make sense, please.
Yep. And I mean, just think about it. If your workout isn't great, but teams see that you don't freak out, they see you handle it well, you mature, and then you go have a good pro day. What does that tell teams? Wow, this kid's pretty level-headed. He's going to be able to handle the emotional ups and downs of being a pro. So, I mean, yes, are there the occasional player once every 10 years that completely bombs at the combine? Yeah, but you know what? If you bomb that badly at the combine, odds are your pro day wasn't going to be all right. Like if you're a receiver running 4.8, I don't think all of a sudden at your pro day you run a 4.4. Let's be fair. You might run a 4.65. So
I'm trying to think of recent examples where the combine hurt a player. I guess Kyle Hamilton is maybe the most recent example because he didn't run the ideal 40, and he should have been a top 5 pick. I think he winded up going a little bit later in the first round. But I mean,
But even that, I will tell you, there were some teams that were not sold on it. So So yes, it may have hurt a little bit, but I don't think it killed them.
Yeah.
So, and also
it cost him a few million.
Yeah, maybe it might have. I'm not sure though. But yeah, it's really hard. I think it's something that agents have, and I'm not knocking agents. They got to do what they think is best for their kids. But I think sometimes agents get it in their head that a bad 40 is the end. When the reality is, if a kid really is legitimately fast, he's gonna. If he has a bad combine, he'll run fast at his pro day. If he legitimately is a fast guy, fast guys don't run bad regularly. They generally run pretty smooth. And trust me, I think there's going to be a few teams starting soon that are, and maybe this year, that if they don't have a 40, you're not getting on their board. Because I know there's one team already that has that. And I think recent players that have skipped running it all and not always panned out has led to those teams putting their flag even deeper in the ground, saying, if you don't run, you are not able to be on our board.
It's a hard sell as a talent evaluator. How do you go into a war room and tell your GM, I want to draft this kid? And then he asks you, well, how fast is he? I don't know, coach.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get a case for a guy like that? I don't know.
It's hard. It's really, really hard. But anyway, we're going on a tangent. I'm excited. We'll talk. I got about 12 guys already I want to talk about on this combine list that are either guys I'm excited about or guys I've seen little things on or guys that I think everybody in the NFL is trying to figure out. So we're going to have a lot of fun next Saturday talking all the combine guys we can't wait to see. You'll be there. I won't. So, but it's all good. You'll be able to report back.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. We'll be out there in 2 weeks with the on-location coverage. Combine Confidential will be rolling deep. Good friend Adam's Exploits checking into the show. Yes, I'm rocking the beard. The winter beard is here for the snowy Jersey weather, and we got above 40 degrees this week, Adam. So I know you're happy about that. I'm happy about that. How's the weather out in Chi-Town, Russ?
Today it's going to be mid-50s. It was 55 yesterday. So I think we got about 4 or 5 good weather days coming our way.
Yeah, no, that's good. That means it's coming our way as well. And I'm looking forward to next week's show. We are 68 days away from the draft. So next week will be just outside of 2 months, a week away from the combine. Exciting times, my friend. Always love chopping it up and talking draft with you.
It is awesome. I can't wait. I love draft time as you do. And next Saturday will be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. There he is. And there he goes. Russ Lande joining us each and every Saturday here on the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. Now, if you're just tuning in, we do have a lot of stuff going on over at allaccessfootball.com. I'm talking rankings. I'm talking positional rankings, overall rankings. I'm talking scouting reports, background reports, insider intel, information we've gathered from coaches and players throughout the scouting trails from our preseason journeys into the regular season and the All-Star game circuit. Of course, out at the combine, we'll be at the various pro days, counting you down to destination Pittsburgh. It's what we do. Our 24th year of providing independent draft analysis. And, between Russ and myself, I guess, it's over 50 years of experience. So I enjoy talking football with them each and every Saturday here. We'll be back with our combine preview show next week. Again, just a programming reminder in case you missed any of our recent shows. Last week, we did the Under the Radar offense preview show. On Tuesday, I did the Sports Rage with Gabriel Morency. That's another 45-minute segment you can catch over at allaccessfootball.com. A couple days ago, I did the Combine Snub Show. You can also find that on the website. Next week, we'll do our Combine Primer preview. And you can also find all of our All-Star Game coverage. Again, we were on location. It started off at the FCS Showcase. From there, we went to the College Gridiron Showcase and then the Dream Bowl. We were on location for the American Bowl, the Hula Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl. And we are truly the only media outlet out there in the universe that you will find reports on those events, every single one of them. So we got all the risers, all the surprisers, unfortunately, a few sliders mixed in, but we can't stop and we won't stop doing this damn thing. So make sure you take advantage of the pre-combine sale, 30% off, includes all the premium content over at allaccessfootball.com, as well as the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, our best edition yet, over 500 in-depth scouting reports, probably more. I'm curious to see where we land on that. I just got done editing 116 pages, almost halfway through. We'll deliver that next month. And, man, this is the saddest time of the show is when I have to say goodbye to all the good people out there. You know, I don't know if there were some streaming issues today, trying to find it out there on the Twitter X universe and Facebook and YouTube just wasn't showing up for me. You guys found it. So shout out to our chat room people, Adams Exploits, Douglas Dorner, Dave Del Cole. Check out the Scout Honors podcast on the website in memory of Dave T. Thomas. We've got a whole draft outlook and grand perspective overview. So if you're a draft Nick, you can get lost for days, if not years, over at the Draft Bible. Again, just check out that NFL Draft headquarter page on the menu tab. You'll get all the information that you could possibly imagine. And hey, that about does it here for another edition of the All Access Football NFL Draft Watch Show. I think tomorrow, keep a lookout over on the website. I've been compiling a list of pro day dates for March, and we'll probably publish that on Sunday. So got a lot of scouting reports in the kitty, and we will continue to bang you and bop you over the head with nonstop draft analysis. Again, 68 days away from the 2026 NFL Draft. Destination Pittsburgh. I was Rick Serritella. For my co-host Russell Lande and all the people out there around the universe, we appreciate you tuning in. One last reminder, smash that like button, share it, subscribe for new show alerts, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Buckle up.